What can a too agreeable young woman do to be more disagreeable and assertive if that isn't how she is temperamentally inclined? Well, that's a good question, and I would say, first of all, that's a very common question that people who go into psychotherapy ask. I think the most common problem that psychotherapists deal with, apart from anxiety and depression, is probably assertiveness training. So the first thing I would say is you really need to figure out what you want. And I would recommend doing the self-authoring program, the future authoring program in particular, because if you want to stand up for yourself, you have to have your goals and your vision well laid out and well defined, and then you have to have a strategy that is matched to those goals, so that you know what you want, so that you know when you're not getting it. Otherwise, you're left with a vague sense of dissatisfaction and resentment, and that's a very, very difficult thing to articulate. And if you can't articulate it, then you can't negotiate. If you know what you want and you know why, then you can make a case for yourself. Okay, so let's assume now that you've laid out a vision and a counter vision, which the future authoring program also helps you do, so you know what kind of hell you want to avoid that you might drift into if you were too agreeable for the rest of your life. And that would be a hell that consisted mostly of people taking advantage of you all the time and you feeling resentful and bitter about it. Not something I would recommend. See, I think that women are agreeable because it helps them deal with infants, but it's not a great temperamental strategy for dealing with complex organizations in the adult world. So I think it's a price that women pay for also being adapted to have plenty of patience for very young children. And then you have to overcome that to some degree to put yourself forward properly in more complex hierarchies of accomplishment. So I would say once you have your vision established, your vision for the future, and your counter vision, so you're afraid of what will happen if you don't stand up for yourself, then you need to consult your resentment. Because if you're resentful about something, as far as I can tell, there's generally only two reasons. One is you should grow the hell up and quit whining. So you got to find out first if you're just feeling sorry for yourself, and you can think that through, make a pro and con case, and you can talk to somebody that you care about that. I'm not assuming that that's the reason, but that's one potential reason. If you're not merely feeling sorry for yourself, then you probably have something to say and something that you need. And you need to figure out what that is, and then you have to develop a strategy to put that forward. I've seen lots of people in my personal life and in my private practice not get what they want because, well, A, they don't specify it, and B, they don't ask for it. And if you're negotiating, say, for a raise or for a promotion and so forth, you have to put yourself forward. You need to tell the person you're working for why you should be treated with more consideration or respect, or have more resources devoted to you, or more authority shifted to you. And you have to make a case for that, a compelling case, so that they have a reason to attend to you. And they're not going to notice, because most managerial types are so overloaded with work that they never notice when anything's going right. They just notice the things that are going wrong. So you need to make a plan. You have to have a strategy that goes along with that plan. You have to have articulated arguments for why a certain form of treatment is appropriate to you. And then you have to have the courage to put that forward. And I guess you have to remember that you owe yourself as much as you owe other people. You have to take care of yourself like you take care of other people. And that's a moral duty. And if you practice that, you can do it. And a lot of that's also associated with telling the truth. You know, you don't have a better friend than the truth, even though it can be very harsh in the short term. And so if you're unhappy at work because you're being taken advantage of, then you have to strategize yourself out of that. You have to learn to negotiate. And a lot of that also means that you have to overcome your hesitancy to engage in conflict. And you got to think about it this way. Negotiation and conflict are somewhat indistinguishable. And it's easy moment to moment to avoid negotiation and conflict, but you pay a terrible price for it in the medium to long term. It's better to face the conflict forthrightly in the present and make peace for the medium to long term. And there's courage in that. So that's the other thing I would say is gird up your loins and allow yourself to act courageously and truthfully. Truth is your best bet if you're too agreeable. So, you also might find that you have a pretty good critical intelligence, but that you think it's mean, and so that you keep it hidden. Some of the smartest women I knew who were very, very agreeable had unbelievably good instincts with regards to figuring out what other people's motives were, but they were ashamed of their suspicions. And really what that meant was they ended up being ashamed of their critical intelligence because they were so agreeable. So it may be that the darker part of you, the shadow part of you, knows things that you could know if you were willing to admit that they were true. And so you have to give some credence to your darker element, I would say.